My parents do.
I actually do with my grandpa.
My parents
Read
do.
comics.
Read the comics.
Yeah, there's all sorts of good stuff in there.
Cars.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, guys. My name is Lauren. I am a reporter at the Medina Gazette. I've been there about 3 years. I got my degree in journalism from Marietta College. I have a degree in journalism and political science. So I learned about governments and how government works. Because I cover a lot of government meetings, that's part of my job. Not every journalist covers government meetings, but I do. And I got my start in the Chillicothe Gazette, which is in southern Ohio. I worked there for 6 years. Anybody know where Chillicothe, Ohio is? Or have you heard of it? Yeah, okay. Well, their paper was founded in 1801. It was the first newspaper in the Northwest Territories, west of the Alleghenies. Any idea why they would have had a newspaper there in 1801? Yeah.
Because that was the capital.
It was the first capital of Ohio. And that would have been the only place that if you lived there, you would have been able to find out news about Ohio trying to become a state. That would have been a hot topic in 1801 because Ohio became a state in 1803. So newspapers were really the only way that people got information. And the Medina Gazette was founded in 1832, so not too much later, for the same reason. There was no other way for people in town to find information. Everything would have been in your local newspaper. You would have found out births, deaths, local government news, and you would have gotten news from Washington and New York, everywhere else. So, so newspapers were really important, and a lot of historians use them because they are the first draft of history. It's people who lived in the town would go out, go see something happen, go write it down, and they would publish it. So it's a really good resource for people doing historical research. It's a lot different now. Newspapers are much different. We still print every day. Not all newspapers print every day, but we do at Medina Gazette. But we're also online. So we have a website. We publish news articles on our website. How many have read a news article online? News article online? Yeah?
We just read one last week, so everyone
Right, because you guys are on the internet, and that's the easiest way. You can find a news article doing just a search, or you can go to a news website and search for news on the news website. That's another way to do it. But there's a whole lot of ways to get information now. The Medina Gazette this morning, we published a story online about a semi-truck that had jackknifed on 71, shutting down Interstate 71. So people coming from Wadsworth couldn't get through this morning. And we published that on Facebook, we put it on Twitter, and we put it on our website. And throughout the day, the reporters that are at the paper today are updating that story. So when they got names, they put the names in. When they got how people were doing, they had to call a hospital, find out are people okay. They add that information to the story. So the story changes throughout the day. And then tomorrow, we'll publish the final version of whatever we have tonight. It'll go in the print edition for tomorrow's paper. But a lot of people read us online before they even see the print paper. So it's a little bit different now than it used to be, but we still provide a pretty good first draft of history. We do make mistakes. One example I'm going to give you is in 2011, Congresswoman Gabby Giffords in Arizona was shot, and Fox News, CNN, the New York Times, they all reported that she'd been killed. And she didn't die. She was injured, and she's now a spokesperson for gun control advocacy, but all these news stations had got it wrong because one news station reported that she was killed, and then all the other ones said, we don't want to be the last one to get this information, so they just reported it. They didn't do their own research. They didn't fact check it themselves, so it was wrong. And so it brings me to my first question I have for you guys, which is how often have you guys seen something on the internet that was wrong? Yeah, probably all of you have at some time. Can you think of anything? Any examples? Example of something you've seen on the internet not correct? Oh, come on, I know it's the end of the day. Yeah. Photoshop always lies. Yeah, that's a good way. But what about newspaper stories or articles that people forward or pass along? Have you ever seen anything like that? Something that's not true?
The chain letter things.
Yep, a lot of that stuff's wrong. So when you guys are doing your research for these articles you're writing, how do you know what sources are good to trust? What's a good safe source to use? Yeah.
Info Ohio.
Info Ohio. Okay, that's a good one. Did your teacher give you that one?
It's like
Yeah.
It's on the board.
Well, this isn't fair. Okay, but that's all right. That's a good source. Do you sometimes check it with other sources? If you find information, maybe look to see if you can find a secondary source to provide the same information. That's a good way. Are there websites to watch out for or be careful of when you're doing research? Yeah. Wikipedia, yep. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Wikipedia has some good information, but some of it's bad, and so you have to be careful. And I know internet makes it so easy to find things quickly, but what you find isn't always right. So yeah, you got to be careful. As far as sources being trustworthy, I can tell you, you also have to look at where the information is coming from. I once got a phone call that a guy had called me. He said he had been laid off from his job and that the company was closing and that they fired everybody and it was closing. Well, I called the company. 150 people were being laid off, but the company was staying open. So that wasn't correct information that I got from that guy. Well, why did he give me bad information? Well, he had just lost his job. So he was pretty upset. And so sometimes the emotional state somebody's in or a personal beliefs might cloud the way that they present information to you. They might not give you the truth, the facts. They're going to give you their opinion. So you sometimes have to be careful when you get information from sources. Now, when I go to write a story, I sometimes, I first do all my research. That is key. You want to get all your research done before you write. You want to get your research done so that you know what your who, what, when, where, and why are. You guys talked about the who, what, when, where, and why. It's an inverted pyramid, right? Mm-hmm. And so you want to have all those 5 things in the top of your story, near the top. And you don't have to have them all in one sentence. Sometimes it takes a couple sentences. And when you're writing your story, I always say that your lead should be, if you're going to call your best friend up and tell her or him, hey, guess what happened? The first thing you were going to tell them, that should be your lead. When you're retelling a story, the most important, most interesting stuff always needs to be first. And then you can fill them in with the rest as you go down. And maybe get some quotes. You know, you fill in some background. You have to have some quotes from sources. But that's the way you want to do it. And so when I write a story, I usually do an outline first. And so I outline what my who, what, when, where, and why are. And then I outline what the next thing is going to be, some supplemental information, maybe a quote, and I get it all in order so that when I go to write, I know where the story's going. I'm not making it up as I go along. I have a draft to look at. And after my draft is written, I take some time, I walk away, come back, reread it. You always want to reread it. You don't have to rewrite the whole thing, but you want to reread it and you want to look for mistakes you might have made. I make mistakes. I make mistakes every day. That's why I read everything a couple times before I turn it in. So you read it a couple times, make sure it looks good, and then I give it to my editors. And you guys don't have editors, but you have friends, you have families, siblings maybe, who might, you can bounce ideas off of them, have them listen to it, ask them what they think. If they have questions, that means you didn't answer the who, what, when, where, and why. So maybe go back and add to it and make it better. It will always be better the second time you write it. And another thing you can do is read your story out loud to yourself, just reading it out loud. Sometimes you'll notice things that you didn't notice when you hear it, that you don't notice when you just look at the page. So those are some of the advice.
Did you hear that? Rewrite it. Read your paper, and then revise it. Maria.
I know, and I know it sounds boring because you finished writing it and you're like, I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to look back at it. So don't look back at it. I would encourage you to put it down for a while and then come back to it. I think that's the best way to do it because then your mind's kind of fresh again and you can look at it with a fresh set of eyes and you'll catch things you didn't catch before. And then you break up the work so you're not doing it all at once. And I would also recommend you read a lot. Reading is good. It helps you be a better writer. You can't write well if you aren't well read. So I would say read a lot, and even reading assignments you can break up the way you do writing. Just read a chapter at a time. Don't wait till Sunday night to do all your reading. Let's do on Monday morning. That would be my advice on that. So I don't have a lot I think to add. So I'm gonna ask you guys if you have any questions, or if your teacher has any questions for me, things I didn't go over.
Come on, guys. Questions.
Mr. Belzo.
Where's your phone?
I'm videotaping her.
Talk about in middle school and high school, you had no intentions of becoming a journalist.
Right. Yeah.
And talk about that experience.
Yes. So I was not good at, well, I thought writing was hard. I thought it took a lot of time. Writing is still my least favorite part of my job as a journalist. I enjoy interviewing people and researching a whole lot more than I do writing. But at the end of the day, the better job I do researching, the better job I do preparing to write, the easier the writing part is. So if I have all my information, it makes writing it really easy. I got into writing in high school. I had a really great teacher that made writing easy for me, and it made me feel like my writing was worthwhile. I felt like I could do this. Writing is something I can do. Not everyone's going to be a novel writer. Not everyone has to write novels. I could never write a long book. I couldn't even write a book that length. Nope, I couldn't do that. So my stories are actually pretty short. 200, 250 words sometimes. They're that short. So that makes it easier because I like to write about breaking news and government, and so. But do whatever kind of writing you like to do. If you like writing about sports, go write about sports. You know, when you get to high school, I'm sure that you have a student newspaper or a yearbook. You can go. You can go cover sports games for them. Go watch games and write about it. You'll only get better by practicing. Keep a journal. I started keeping a journal in high school, and that's when I realized I liked writing. Journal's a fun way to write and not have to share it with anybody. So you can just write, and it can be a place to practice writing, and you can laugh at yourself 10 years later when you look back at what you wrote when you were in high school. So yeah, I would say get through it. Writing doesn't come easy, but it gets a lot easier. And the more you read, the easier it is to write. I promise you. Definitely makes it a lot easier. So.
Now your job isn't, you don't sit behind the desk for very much.
No, I get to go out and I get to interview people. So I came in, I did a story on a librarian in town that got an award. So I started my day there, and I did a story and I interviewed her and I chatted about her life and I took some pictures of her, and then I went driving around to get some photos of fog. You guys remember we had the fog last week? So I just got to drive around country roads looking for like really scary, dark, foggy places to photograph. And so that was fun. And then I came back to the office, and then I did some phone calls for my desk. But I didn't actually start writing most of my stuff till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I turned in all my writing by 6 or 7. So the writing was really only the end part of my day. But yeah, I do a little bit of everything. That's kind of why I got into journalism. I'm always interviewing somebody new. I'm always meeting somebody new. And that's the really fun part, is getting to meet new people. The writing part, then I get to share with the world who they are and what they're about. So that's kind of a big responsibility. So take it pretty seriously.
Who are some of the famous people you got to meet?
Oh, yes. Well, I have met famous people. I've interviewed Michelle Obama. I've interviewed, you know who Michelle Obama is, right? Who knows that? Yeah, I don't know. John McCain, he ran for president. He's a U.S. senator. I interviewed him, and his running mate, Sarah Palin, she was running for vice president. I've interviewed John Glenn. He's an astronaut. If you guys have ever been up to the NASA, the Science Center up in Cleveland, there's that tiny little spaceship that he went up in. It's terrifying that he went up in that thing. So I got to interview some pretty cool, pretty famous people. It's been neat.
Bobby?
If nothing generally interesting happens for like a whole week or so, what are you supposed to write about?
Set stuff on fire. No, I don't. I don't. No, there are slow news days. A lot of the people stories that we do and people features, we'll write up ahead of time and save them for what we call a slow news day. And that's just when there's not a lot going on. We cover a variety of topics, so we have people covering sports, we cover government, we cover people, so there's usually something going on. But yeah, we do have days where there's really just not much going on, and that's what we save some of those feature type stories for. But in a county this big with 3 cities, there's usually something. There's usually at least 1 or 2 breaking news type stories for the next day's paper. Sometimes there's more than that, and then it gets really busy. But usually we have enough to fill. But yeah, we write ahead. We hold stories to wait for slow news days. So
Do you get to pick your stories, or do you?
a little bit of both. So I get assigned to do stories. I cover government in the city of Brunswick. So and I've covered Medina school board meetings. So I cover government meetings, which can be really boring. But then I also generate my own story ideas. So I can just come to my boss and pitch a story and say, hey, I think this would be really interesting. We should write about it. I did a story last week on a girl with autism who got a playhouse donated to her from a company. And so I told my boss, I thought that would be a good story. And he said, yeah, go out there and do it. So I got to take some photos and write about it. And yeah, so it's a little bit of both. Especially at a small paper, we're expected to come up with some of our own stories. But yeah, it's usually not hard to find. You make friends in the community and you tell them, hey, anytime you think of a story idea, please call me. And it works out pretty well. They usually get back to you pretty quick. So yeah.
Any other questions, guys?
I know it's the end of the day.
I don't know.
Yeah.
What's like the craziest thing you had to write about?
Craziest thing. I don't know. What do you mean by crazy?
Like weird, like that doesn't happen a lot.
There was, when I worked in southern Ohio, we had an outbreak of black widow spiders. They have like a big red marking on their back. They're poisonous. And a guy found them all over his shed, so he brought a bunch in a jar, and he walks into my office and he smacks them down on the desk, and he's like, these are in my backyard. And I was like, whoa, okay, they should have stayed in your backyard. I don't know why you brought them here. But I actually was able to reach out, make some calls to wildlife experts, and found out there was like a huge outbreak down there. And so we wrote a story, and we were able to let people know, hey, if you got little kids, be careful, because these might be in your backyard. That was a little bit scary. That and in a local creek in Chillicothe, someone caught a piranha. That was unusual and exciting. It was a pet that somebody had thrown in the lake. But it was people keep them as pets. It's not a good pet. Don't get a piranha. But that was a very similar story. Guy just walked into the newsroom. Hey, this is a piranha. Yes, it is. Thank you for bringing it here. So, yeah, people that have wacky stories to tell, they find us. And yeah, and usually it's worth writing about. So.
Oh, Bobby?
What about if you have so much stuff to do, like if you have 15 reports